To have brothers and sisters means that you stop auditioning and proving yourself and you start supporting. And you thought this whole relationships thing was easy. It actually, in terms of all of the practices that we engage in, prayer, reading God's word, being in worship, all of these various aspects of all of these things, this might take more work than all of them combined in your life. But it will also affect more change in your life than anything else that you will participate in. That's the family nature of Christian community. See, a healthy relationship also speaks truth with love. That's what I'm doing with you, hopefully. Now, I need to point out that we've been looking at this text as a basis for how we live together in terms of community, but it's also how we live within the larger society as a whole as well. How do people inside the Christian community relate to those who oppose them, those that are on the outside of the Christian community? The persecutors, the enemies. Well, verse 14 says, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. I suppose that could happen within the community of Christ as well. But this is as crucial to our understanding of our relationships as the uniqueness of Christian community is. Because really, when you think about it, all communities practice love within the community. There are always close bonds within a community and shared values within those that call themselves brothers and sisters within that community. Christianity doesn't have a corner on that market. We are not unique in that sense. But here's something that I think is very difficult for the world to replicate, and that is the Christian's relationship with outsiders, people that might consider themselves our enemies. And here's why this is so important. We live, I don't need to tell you this, in a very pluralistic society now. Very. I mean, it used to be like every people group had their own particular set of beliefs and ideas about one thing. Like everybody, take my ancestry. Everybody in Sweden, they were all Lutheran. Thank God I'm not Lutheran. No, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, man, keep your mouth shut. Everybody in Italy was a Catholic. Everybody in India was a Hindu. Everybody in Japan was a Shinto. But now it's all mixed together, right? So how are we gonna deal with each other when we're all mixed together like that? And one of the answers that we get continually from our society is not a very good answer. In fact, I'll call it a naive answer. But it's the answer of our society. They just say, coexist. Don't say you have the truth, because that leads to demonizing the people who don't have the truth. Just coexist. Don't dare say Jesus is the Son of God or that the Bible is the truth. That's very exclusive. Don't do that. Why don't you just say the Bible is a truth and Jesus is a way to God? That would be making the world a better place to be, in my opinion, says our society. But there is a definite naivete in saying that, and let me show you how. Because when somebody says, let's not draw boundaries anymore, let's not draw any more lines, do you know what they just did? They drew a line. The line is, these are the good people, the people who don't draw lines. The bad people draw lines. That's as sharp a line as any other line. Even to say, let's not draw a line, is to ultimately draw a line. Or to say, don't tell anybody that you have the truth and that they have to believe in the gospel to be saved. Don't do that. Well, what have you just done if that's what you're saying? You're saying you have a better way of doing it, and we ought to all adopt your way, which is just as much proselytization as anything Christianity asks us to do. You're doing the very thing that you said, I'm not allowed to do. Also, this idea that all communities ought to be inclusive of all the other communities is actually really silly. Let me show you how. To be a community of any stripe, you have to have distinctives that set you apart. You have to, by definition. So, for example, let's say you're on the steering committee of Greenpeace. Whatever you think about that organization is irrelevant. We're just doing this as an exercise. And you start saying things like, remember, you're on the steering committee of Greenpeace. And you start saying things like, I've been looking at all the data and I've come to believe that we need to do a lot more drilling for oil in the Alaskan tundra. Or maybe you say, perhaps whaling has some benefit. What's going to happen to you? You're going to get thrown out on your ear. And maybe other things are going to be done to you that are less pleasant than that. You're not going to be part of that organization very long. Why? Because they have boundaries. They have standards for their community. But wait, shouldn't we all be inclusive? Isn't that one of our values, to say that there are no absolutes? And you know what they're going to tell you? No. Because you're taking away the very reason for our existence. If we are that inclusive, we don't have a purpose anymore. We're not a community if everybody can believe anything. Does that make sense? See, the better option is not demonizing exclusive claims. What you actually want is a community whose beliefs lead them to not demonize the opposition, to maintain their beliefs, to maintain their standards, and not demonize the opposition, but instead to love and respect people on the other side. The truth of Christianity is that a man died for his enemies. A man refuses to strike back even when they come after him. That's the exclusive truth that you have to believe in order to become a Christian. And that exclusive truth should lead you, if you truly believe that, into being the same kind of person, the kind of person who would not strike back. And this is what Paul says then. Bless those who curse you and don't curse them. And in verse 16, live in harmony with one another. Don't be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. Right? He doesn't just say, don't get revenge, although he says that. He says, bless them. Don't just live not negatively, live positively. Love them, respect them, live in harmony with them. Give thought to what will go over the best in the eyes of everyone. But he never, ever, ever, ever says abandon your principles to do it. So if you understand the fundamentals of the Gospels, you will love and respect and never disdain, never demonize the people who don't agree with you. Even the people who are against you, even your opponents, even your enemies. Verse 20, to the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink, for by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. It's all relationship. Inside the community, outside the community. It's all relationship. And I could spend a whole lot of time, probably an entire sermon, maybe 3 or 4 sermons, literally on that last phrase, heap burning coals on his head, because there's a lot there. Suffice it to say, if you believe that they need great conviction of their sins and they need to see the error of their ways, the best way for you to do that is through your loving behavior toward them. Convict them through doing good to them. What are they going to say to you? I can't believe you were nice to me. You're trying to convert me because you were nice. Sorry? Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. What makes Christian community unique is not just the family nature between those inside, but there is that. But the absolute love and respect that you show to the people on the outside. So what should we draw from all of this? How do we apply this to our lives? When you look at the Bible, this is like the ultimate for us. When you look at the Bible, what you see in the Bible, throughout the Bible, is the failure of the family relationship. Over and over and over and over. And a lot of people point to that and say, oh, yeah, look, there's polygamy. The Bible teaches polygamy. No, actually, when you read the Bible stories and you see polygamy, what you find is that there is failure of the family relationship every single time there's polygamy. It's noted with great derisiveness, because as soon as it creeps into the relationship, problems happen everywhere within the family. Right? The story of the Bible is the failure, really, of blood family. Family that is related by blood. What's described is this failure of families to give unconditional, intimate, endlessly patient relationships. That's ultimately what we really need, but we have failed to do that throughout our history because of the effects of sin in our lives. Unconditional, intimate love. Like, I have a hard time even saying that sentence in today's culture, because if I say the word intimate and love together, we're off to the races with our imaginations. That is not what I'm talking about. We want it, yet family has basically failed to give it. So if you go all the way back to the very beginning of Genesis, what do you have? Cain killing Abel. Look, that's like chapter 4. We're off to a horrible start. Abraham not caring for Sarah the way he should. We've outlined that recently. Ishmael struggling with Isaac. Jacob struggling with Esau. Rachel struggling with Leah. By the way, they're sisters by blood. Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers. On it goes, story after story of failure of humanity to live up to the ideal of just storge love. Even when it's obvious to them that it should be the ideal, they fail at it. David and Bathsheba. The Bible talks about the failure of family to give you the unconditional, intimate relationships your heart was built for. It is not good for man to be alone, and yet we cannot fulfill it through a sin-filled relationship that we have with our family. And there's this place in Proverbs 18 that actually says an offended brother is harder to win back than a strong city. You'd be better off going to war with a city than it would be to try and bring back your offended brother. Be easier anyway. But then Jesus comes and he says something just absolutely stunning. As he's outside the city, he's preaching in the synagogue, and his family's like, there's a crowd around him, his family's trying to get in, and they're like, hey, your family's here. And he's like, who's my family? And they're all like, what? And he's like, this is what he says. Verse 35 of Mark 3, for whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. Like, Jesus is setting everything on his ear, and he's saying, the way you know if you're really executing the kind of love that I have is whether or not you're actually obedient to my Father in heaven. But do you also hear what he's offering? Maybe you have missed out on family. Maybe your family's relationships are terrible. Maybe you walked away from your blood relationships long ago. Maybe that experience of love is lacking in your life. But Jesus is saying, I have something that can give you that storge, that can give you that phileo, that can give you that agape, that unconditional, intimate relationship that you need. And Jesus came to his own, his blood relatives, all rejected him. He knows what you need more than you do because he's experienced it. And then he was betrayed. He was denied first, and then he was betrayed. He was handed over. He was killed by his blood relatives. He's like Abel and Cain. In fact, Hebrews 12 says so. He was slain. This is just one more testimony of the failure of human family love. But the difference is that he did it voluntarily. He did it as our substitute. He came to pay the penalty for all of our failures and love one another. All of our selfishness, all of our pride, he came to pay the penalty for all of that. Every instance where we may not have literally spilled blood, but we spilled relationship blood. Paul says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And Jesus Christ comes and he says, I'm going to deal with the barrier between you and the Father. I'm going to make sure that you are included. I'm going to show you this love, unconditional, intimate, endlessly patient. He does. And that's the one thing that you and I are desperately looking for in our lives. So here's what the Father says. He says, when you see what we did, my only son and I, what we did in order to bring you into our family, I will free you. when you recognize that, it'll free you to look around this room and to see people, the outcasts, the losers, the people you ordinarily wouldn't like. People like me. People that you wouldn't call sister or brother. And then you get to love on them in ways where you include them and bring you both more into the purpose that the Father has called you to, for the purpose that in which he created you. He created you to have relationships and to bring him glory. See, we need Christian community far more than we realize. Like, sorry if you're online, but online services won't cut it. It's not enough. You're engaging your mind, but you aren't engaging anything else of who you are. How are you going to go all in? We've got to rub shoulders and love on a group of people that we wouldn't normally be with. That's also why, just because we have a conflict in the church, that is the worst reason for us to leave it. We're called to work it out, to be that family, to exercise storge and phileo, and ultimately maybe someday achieve agape. We need the church far more than we realize.